Hello, this is the Romeo and Juliet revision clinic. So this is literature paper 2, section B. So you've just done your inspector calls and now you're moving on to Romeo and Juliet. You've got 45 minutes to do this, 56 with additional time. It's a 30 marker, and of course you have your clean copy of the text with you. Let's look first of all at the assessment objectives. You've got AO1, AO2 and AO4 in this, and this is important that we remember this because AO4 is not in an inspector call. So you've got AO1, they're all equally weighted. AO1 is about close knowledge and understanding of the text. It's also about maintaining a critical style and presenting an informed personal engagement. So that means being able to piece together a focused and clear argument, okay, that is closely connected to the question. AO2 is analysis of language, form and structure, and what's the impact of the methods that the writer uses. And AO4 is about context. And it's about, we'll talk about context a little bit more in a second, but integrating context that is relevant, okay, and making it part of your argument, using it to support what you're doing in AO1 and AO2. Okay. A couple of things here from the exam board that might be worth having a look at. Okay, so they are saying, and you can pause this if you want to have a look in greater detail, but they're saying that the best answers incorporated a balance of AO1, AO2 and AO4. Some insightful responses were seen that engaged fully with the question and provided detail from the text, okay, with well-chosen quotations. Okay, it says, and this is important here, and maybe I can use the old, here we go, let's annotate. The less successful, okay, tended to narrate events, okay, so if you find that you are, you don't want to get sucked into retelling the story, okay, we know that already. This is about an argument and backing that up with analysis. Okay, they go on to say in section B, it's imperative candidates remember that marks for context, which is AO4, are awarded. Okay, and it's all equal value, as we've said. The most effective answers integrated points of context throughout, often to develop on AO1 and AO2 points. Okay, that's what we said before. So use the context to strengthen what you are doing in terms of the methods that Shakespeare is using and the argument point that you are developing. Candidates should try to avoid hoodwinking everything they know about the context into their answers, but select appropriate, let's put it over here, appropriate relevant detail. Okay, so that means avoiding this idea of just bolting something on at the end, a sort of chunk of history. It's all about making it relevant to what you're doing and the argument that you are developing. And then there's a reminder there in that final paragraph about the need to analyse form and as well as language and structure. Okay, so if you can get a balance of that, then that will really mean your argument is thoughtful and it's developed. Okay, so that's the exam board. And this is the mark scheme, okay, and this is the top half of the mark scheme. So what's it all about? As we said before, it's about a clear argument that is closely focused on the question. It is about assured knowledge and understanding of the text, okay, and you will do that by using a range of quotations from across the play, okay, rather than focusing everything, from right at the beginning of the play, for example. Choose moments throughout so that it allows you to really show that you understand the whole text. Analysis of language, analysis of form and structure, and then also, of course, context and making it relevant to your question and relevant to the argument that you are trying to make, okay? And, it says relevant examples in support, so that is a balance of quotations, but also references to the text, the moments. And that's important that you have that balance because you don't want to spend your time, flicking through the text, trying to pull out quotations the whole time, when actually you're not always going to need quotations. You'll have a balance of moments and then quotations that you can dig into a little bit for your analysis. So that's the mark scheme. All right, there's chosen a couple of practice questions here straight from the June 2018 paper that I will use. I'll use one of these just as an example that we can talk through. So you've got two here. You have a choice, so you get to choose one. In this case, we've got Paris is a more suitable husband than Romeo for Juliet. Okay, so Paris is more suitable as a husband than Romeo for Juliet. How far do you agree with this statement? You must consider language, form and structure and refer to the context of the play in your answer. Okay, so it's all spelled out for you there in terms of those assessment objectives, in a way. So, you are reminded the context is there. That's an interesting question because it has the statement and then it says, how far do you agree with this statement? Okay, so, you already have a sense of how am I going to argue this? Okay, well, I need to argue, in support of, and I may equally challenge this statement as well. I may say, well, actually, no, yes, Paris is, but equally there are arguments to suggest that Romeo may be more suitable. Okay, so I think it lends itself quite nicely to the formation of an argument, and it's quite easy therefore to have this personal engagement. Then you've got question 12, so this is your either or, and this one says explore the theme of loss in the play. You must consider language, form and structure and refer to the context of the play in your answer. Okay, so this is more of a character question on the top, which of course, you will deal with themes as well, and a thematic question below. So, perhaps a wider question where you can, loss in the play, you could take that in all sorts of directions. So you choose the one you fancy most and have a quick think about, okay, what do I know best, and what can I come up with 3 main points that I can, that I can really delve into and come up with an argument. I'm going to choose the first one, question 11, about Paris, whether Paris is a more suitable husband for Romeo than Juliet. Whether Paris is a more suitable husband than Romeo for Juliet, and how far I agree. So my thought process would be, okay, well, Paris and Romeo are going to be the main, are going to be the centre of this argument. What are the main moments that I'm likely to draw on, bearing in mind I've got a copy of the text in front of me for Paris and also for Romeo. So that's where I start, which sort of gives me an idea of, okay, so where am I going to flick to in the text? Where am I going to have it open if I do need to be digging in? But from at this stage, I can come up with a few ideas without that. My first argument is actually going to be that, and you'll see here, let's get a pen. There we go. I've come up with number 1. I'm going to try and come up with 3 ideas because I think that's the structure that I want to use. I want to try and have 3 main topic sentences, 3 main paragraphs. So Paris has the approval of Lord and Lady Capulet. Okay, and that gives me the chance to talk about why. Well, I can talk about his status, his position, the fact that he is the county Paris, etc. I know that he is also the cousin of the prince, and this all gives me a chance, if I'm talking about status, to make a connection to what was important in Renaissance times, and status was one of those things, wasn't it? And position. So I immediately think, that's a good one because I can tie in context. I know that the nurse and Lady Capulet describe Paris in Act 1, Scene 3, when Lady Capulet rather unsubtly tells Juliet that Paris wants to marry her and it's going to happen. So I know I can dig into that, and I do remember that Lady Capulet talks about, or alludes to the fact that basically Paris can be a vehicle of social climbing for them and for Juliet. So I know that I've got a good point that I can make there. I might do this structure, but given that it is Paris and Romeo, in this paragraph, I might contrast the two. So I've got Capulet has the approval of Lord and Lady. Paris has the approval of Lord and Lady Capulet. Romeo, of course, does not, by virtue of the fact that he is a Montague. And, I can sort of think about structure, about how the play starts, and the fact that we are left in no doubt about how much Capulet hates the Montagues. And therefore, Romeo is going to be unsuitable because, and then again, this is another lovely contextual point for me. After all, I'm sad to say, it really is all about Lord Capulet, isn't it? As to whether he, who's a suitable husband for his daughter, because in Elizabethan times, the father was the person that had the final say, or the only say on who the daughter got married to. Okay, so that gives me a nice contextual link. I think I can then go a little bit, I can dedicate one paragraph to Paris and one paragraph to Romeo. Paris, so here, Paris's behaviour. So he follows the protocols. Okay, so we have this sort of negotiation, don't we, very early on in the play, Act 1, Scene 2, where, before we even meet Juliet, her future is being discussed and decided by Lord Capulet and Paris. And that is, he is doing what is expected. He is following the protocols that one would expect, in the 1500s when this is being seen, and equally earlier when this is set. Okay, he does what is expected, and we see that again in Act 3, Scene 4. When Juliet is very upset, seemingly about Tybalt's death, and Paris is there, and even though he expresses some doubts about, this isn't the right time to woo, these times of woe are not the right time to woo, but nevertheless Capulet says, no, you're going to get married then, and he agrees with Capulet and says, okay, fine, I wish that Thursday were tomorrow. Okay, so he does what is expected of him, and he is obedient to the father, which is the way it had to be. So he is suitable from that point of view, and the Elizabethan audience would see that. However, does he care about Juliet? Is there any love? We have that very awkward scene that I can remember from the film, which is good because I can then pick that out in the play in Act 4, Scene 1, when he meets Juliet at Friar Lawrence's chapel, and he says to her, "Thy face is mine." Okay, and I just wonder, that might be a good little moment, and I know I can find that quite quickly in the text and look that up, because, particularly perhaps for the modern audience, we want to know, I think, who is a suitable husband? Well, we want to know that there is some care and there is some love. It doesn't seem to be that way, and yet I do want to make a connection to a little bit further on in the play. And we do find him, this isn't in the film at all, you might remember, Paris being killed at the Capulet crypt. But he cries. He cries at the grave, and he calls her sweet flower, and he actually dies protecting her grave. So it does allow me just to have this alternative view of him and say, well, maybe he did care about her. Now, hopefully you're screaming, yeah, but what about Juliet and all this? She didn't care about him. Okay, so, and I think that's our final point here about Romeo. Perhaps, it is requited. We get the sonnet in Act 1, Scene 5. Is Romeo suitable? Well, he's suitable in so much as that he seems to passionately love Juliet, and isn't that what should make for a suitable husband? I know I can talk about form, because I can dig into that sonnet in Act 1, Scene 5 when they first meet. I can talk about the balcony scene. Juliet is the sun and bright angel, and this is the point. It is requited love by Juliet. She says, "My bounty is as boundless as the sea. My love is as deep." And I think those are some easy wins for us to to analyse, okay? He doesn't follow the rules. He doesn't follow the protocols. And that would be frowned upon, particularly with the Shakespearean audience. But he does, we can view this several ways, can't we? But, ultimately he does, he is willing to commit the mortal sin of suicide for her. He says, I will lie with thee tonight. So I think that, can be an argument that he loves her and that he's willing to do anything for her, including the sort of ultimate sacrifice. Okay, and that can be argued that it makes him suitable as a husband. Right, okay. We got our plan. You may not decide you want to have one quite so detailed as that. I didn't think that was too detailed, but I threw down my ideas. I can then cross out the ones I think I'm not going to use or just not use some of those moments. That's fine. It might be that, that time doesn't allow me to do all those things. I might think, okay, I'm spending too long on paragraph 1. I want to get on to my final points. That's fine. I don't have to do everything that's in my plan, but it's good to have that there in front of me just as an anchor to know, okay, I know where I'm going with this. I know where my topic sentences are, what my topic sentences are going to be. So we've got our plan. So let's use that plan to create this introduction. Okay, I would suggest that it's going to be 2 or 3 lines long. I mean 2 or 3 sentences, really, by that. Okay, and the things you want to do are, you want to signpost your argument. This is what I am going to argue. Okay, you want to establish that you are answering the question. And I think it is really helpful if you can make an early connection to context. Okay, so get that in early and put it as a root of your argument. It will just help you develop the argument and use context just to sort of run through the middle of the essay. So I have said here, Paris is both more and less suitable as a husband for Juliet than Romeo. Okay, so I am immediately saying, right, well, to what extent was the question? And I'm telling you, well, I agree and I disagree. Okay. Given the patriarchal society of the Renaissance era, he would be considered a suitable husband in the eyes of Lord Capulet. Okay, so I know what my point number 1 is going to be. It is the father, after all, who decides the suitability of his daughter's husband. Okay, so I'm getting in context. And Paris's description and behaviour may well seem more suitable, particularly to an Elizabethan audience, who may respect that he adheres to the conventions of the time. Okay, so that was point 1. Romeo, on the other hand, in fact, that's point 1 and that was paragraph 1 and paragraph 2, wasn't it? Because then I've moved on to Paris's description and his behaviour. And now my point 3, Romeo, on the other hand, as a Montague, has much to mark him as unsuitable. However, the fact that he loves Juliet, and more importantly that she loves him in return, makes him a more suitable husband, particularly perhaps in the eyes of the modern audience. Okay, so I am effectively saying, here's the context. Here's point number 1 about Capulet. Here's point number 2 about Paris. And here's what I'm going to tell you next about Romeo. Okay, and that is my argument. Okay, and yeah, as you see, it doesn't have to be as long as that, but that actually turns out to be, I think it's only a couple of sentences. All right. Now, feel free to pause the video at this point if you'd like to have a read of this in a little bit more detail. I might just talk you through it because I want us to have a look at the assessment objectives and see that how we're applying those. Okay, so our success criteria, if you remember, was we need a really clear argument that is focused on the question. We need references from across the play if we can get them. We might not get them all in this opening paragraph, but we will need to have them from across the play as we go through. We want to analyse language, we want to analyse structure, and we want to analyse form when we can as well. And we want the context to be weaved into our argument, okay, to be developing our argument and also to be developing our language analysis as well. Okay, so topic sentence: Shakespeare allows for a strong argument that Paris is indeed a more suitable husband, okay, so we're very focused on the question, than Romeo is, because Paris has the approval and blessing of Juliet's parents. Great. Verona's and Elizabethan England's patriarchal society dictated that the father of the household held ultimate power over his family, and it was he who decided who his daughter would marry. Context, great. Paris is established as an eligible suitor, being described in Act 1 as both noble and valiant, in the eyes of the Capulet parents at least. And we learn that he is the prince's cousin and carries a title, the County Paris. Okay, so we've got lots of little references there that are saying I have a thorough and sustained understanding of the text. This would make him a suitable husband for Juliet, in so much as her future security and the Capulet family's status and reputation would be enhanced. Indeed, Lady Capulet highlights this opportunity for wealth and increased social status when informing Juliet of Paris's intentions in Act 1. And her lack of sensitivity and subtlety is emphasised by the use of the rhyming couplet, "So shall you share in all that he doth possess, by having him, making yourself no less." Okay, good. So I've got a few little references to language and the importance of the fact that he's the County Paris. I've got some references showing that I understand that, he's the prince's cousin and the effect that has. I've got a few nods to context as well about what's important in society at this time, status and reputation. And now I've managed to get a bit about form by the fact that I'm talking about a rhyming couplet, and the fact that it just emphasises how, the importance that Lady Capulet places on social status, wealth, social climbing. And this was the paragraph where I decided I wanted to deal with Paris and Romeo in relation to Lord Capulet. So then I've moved on to Romeo here. Okay, so Romeo, on the other hand, is of course never going to be considered suitable by Lord Capulet, not in life at least. That is a nod, to the fact that obviously he dies at the end, and does bring about a change of heart in Lord Capulet and Montague. Okay, so he's not going to be considered suitable, not in life at least, by virtue of the fact that he is a Montague. By starting the action of the play with the violence and hatred between the two houses, Shakespeare makes it clear. Okay, good. I've had Shakespeare at the beginning. I've come back to Shakespeare now. I want to try and keep Shakespeare as central as I can to this, because I am therefore talking about what Shakespeare is doing and why. Okay, so Shakespeare makes it clear why Romeo and Juliet's love is death-marked, even before they've met, due to the ancient and thus long-standing grudge that has infected every level of Verona society, from the servants to the civilians, civil blood, up to the heads of the households themselves. Okay, we've got a few quotations in there. We've got this idea of the feud being ancient. You could dig into that even further if you wished and talked about the effect of that adjective, but I've said it means that it's long-standing, it's ancient. You might even suggest that it is somewhat ridiculous in a way, or outdated, or irrelevant on the basis of the fact that it's ancient. Okay, let's go back to it. Indeed, Capulet's first line in the play is the aggressive imperative. Okay, good. So I'm using terminology and I'm getting some language analysis in here. "Give me my longsword. Ho!" When he sees that Montague is present. Okay, this immediate instinct. Okay, so we are talking about, by starting the action, we have this immediate instinct. We are talking also about structure as well as language, and we've also had form up here with the rhyming couplet as well. This immediate instinct to fight leaves no hope that he could ever entertain a dog of the house of Montague as a husband for his only daughter and sole heir. Okay, again, I'm showing that I remember that all his other children have died. We learn that in Act 1, Scene 2. He calls her the hopeful lady of my earth. Okay, and thus this strengthens Paris's suitability, the fact that he hates Montagues that much, okay, that he's willing to draw his sword the moment he sees one. Okay, so that's that's my paragraph 1, okay, and then I would follow the plan and do one, to do 2 and then 3 as well. Those last two might be a little bit shorter, perhaps, but that's fine. Okay, so I've got my introduction. I've done paragraph 1 and 2, and possibly I've got my third one in as well, and I've got a little bit of time left. And if you've got that time, then a short conclusion can be a really powerful way to get in that final punch, I called it, okay, just to ram home what your argument is. Okay, you want to be able to use this conclusion for impact. You don't want to just restate what, the points that you've made. I want you to try and use it to push home that you have this critical style, that you understand about the context, and maybe that you're thinking about, so why has Shakespeare done this? What are Shakespeare's intentions, or what could Shakespeare's intentions be? Okay, sometimes this is the opportunity to talk about maybe how a modern audience might react differently to an Elizabethan audience. Okay, so here's what I have gone for here. The question of whether Paris is more suitable than Romeo as a husband is therefore hugely dependent on context. Paris has the blessing of Juliet's parents and would help achieve their goal of securing a prosperous and socially advantageous union for their daughter and therefore themselves. Okay, so they are also in it for the Capulets as well as their daughter, aren't they? In this violent and feuding Verona society, Paris would seem to be more suitable. Okay, so I'm coming back to the key words. I've used it twice. I really want to make sure that I'm answering the question. Seem to be more suitable, or certainly the safer option. However, Shakespeare's portrayal of Paris as unloved by Juliet and an obstacle to the protagonist's happiness. Okay, after all, it is Paris who gets in the way, doesn't he? And it's this over-hasty, marriage that is being organised by the father that escalates all their problems and doesn't allow them the time that Friar Lawrence wants for them to have, for everything to settle down and for him to find a way to to have their marriage out in the open and be a way of bringing these families together. Okay, so he's an obstacle to the protagonist's happiness. Perhaps Shakespeare's done this. He designs it to make the audience question these ancient patriarchal rules around marriage. Okay, so we'll come back to Shakespeare. Shakespeare's portrayal of Paris as unloved by Juliet and an obstacle to the protagonist's happiness perhaps is designed to, and perhaps is always a really useful word for us to use. Any hedging words like that suggest, this student is giving me some personal engagement. They're taking the risk. They're considering what might Shakespeare have been trying to achieve. Okay, to make the audience question these ancient patriarchal rules around marriage and instead ask, who does Juliet want as her husband? Okay, there's a sad lack of anything to do with Juliet, isn't there, even in this question? Thus, for all his flaws, including being a Montague, Romeo can be argued to be the more suitable husband for Juliet. They are in love, even if it is death-marked. Okay, so hopefully that gives me just a chance to show, I'm being nuanced, I'm being a little bit subtle, but I'm also really trying to put forward an argument. And I'm supporting both sides of it. In this case, I happen to believe that, there are arguments both for and against. This is some feedback from the exam board. I'm not going to go through it. This is the kind of thing that the examiner would be given. You can have a look through that. And it gives you some ideas about the kind of content that you might use for AO1, AO2 and AO4. Okay. And some argument points as well. So here's the criteria. If you want to remind yourself of, what do I need to be doing in this essay? What do I need to be doing? Not in every single, not in all my paragraphs, but I need to make sure that I'm getting this in throughout. Okay, you're not going to analyze every single quotation you use, because you'll choose your moments. You will get in that close analysis on some of your quotations. You will talk about form in some of your quotations, and you will think about structure. Now remember, Romeo and Juliet is such a great play in terms of structure because there are contrasts everywhere. You can always think, Romeo and Juliet is a great play to think about, well, what just came before this and what comes after it? What tone was there in the previous scene? What tone is there now? Why? What character has been introduced before and how? And now what character do we have? Okay, and why is Shakespeare doing that? Why is Shakespeare creating those contrasts? Okay, slide here on how should I revise. I think familiarising yourself with the text is key. Rereading it, reading scene summaries, thinking to yourself about every scene. Why is this scene here? What is the significance of it? What does it add? What's its function? And equally the same with characters. What is the function of this character? They are constructed by Shakespeare. Why? What purpose do they serve? Listen on audiobook. Watch the films. Watch the film version of the Globe performance, which you can order. I've got a copy as well. If you can always. Am I offering you to borrow my copy? Maybe you can come and negotiate with me. Plan your arguments. Okay, plan essays are based around character and theme. What are your 3 strongest arguments for each of these? What are the moments that you're going to use? You know, for each character, what are the moments that I'm going to go to? What are the key moments that I'm likely to base my arguments around, my essays around? Okay, and then you can think about, okay, and what are the key quotations within those moments? Okay, well that should say here 4, shouldn't it? And think about context. You know, context, I think, for Romeo and Juliet is something that that's quite easy to revise and learn for, and then you can think about, okay, so how can I apply this, and to which themes and to which characters? Okay. Right. I hope that's been helpful. If anyone wants to ask me any questions, please find me, and I will happily meet you for 5-10 minutes at a lunchtime, or go through something as and when. So I hope that was helpful. Best of luck, and I leave you with the quotation that Romeo ignored, but I hope you don't, which is wisely and slow. They stumble that run fast. Okay, be methodical, take your time, ask questions, and you'll be fine. Thanks a lot. Bye.